Hi, I'm Dr. Sherry Gaither, and welcome to Empowering Your Life. I'm glad that you joined us today because today we have a program that's going to inspire you and is going to motivate you. And you know what? For some of you, it's going to bring you the hope that you need. You have no idea that it is not by accident or coincidence that you are here and that you've tuned in. So my challenge to you today is do not let anything distract you. I want to use as a theme today, when misery or mess becomes ministry. When misery or mess becomes ministry. You know what? A lot of times, just like Peter, we fall down. And sometimes we don't realize that God can use our mess, He can use our misery to help us recover, and then we can be an instrument in His hands. And I believe that I'm talking to somebody out there or somebody's out there. Either you have gone through and you don't know how to get up, or you've gone through and you don't know how to recover, or you don't see how your mess or your misery can be something that God can use. I'm here to tell you, if you look at the Bible, there's not a person in there who didn't miss it. They had faults, they had character flaws, they had issues, they had weaknesses. They had things going on in their lives, but God did not discount them. God chose to use them. God chose to empower them, and He left them as an example for us. So I need you to know you're in the right place. I have a guest today, and this is a great man of God who has a testimony, a great man of God who is going to just encourage you with words of wisdom and just of his journey, of how God processed him. And so without any more, let me just welcome Hardy Clayton. God bless you and welcome to Empowering Your Life. I am so glad.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here on your program on today.
Well, you know what? I want to get started because so often it just seems like I have a lot of time in a half an hour, but you have a story that would take hours and hours and hours. And in this short time, I want our audience to know that God is a God of a second and a third and a fourth chance. When you look at you today, I'm looking at a man who has a story to tell. So why don't we just unpack your story, and then it'll bring us up to date as to the call of God on your life and how He has taken your misery and made it your ministry.
And that's exactly what God did. He took someone who basically was, in the gutter, and He brought me to a place now where I clearly understand that He had a divine call for my life. I'm a person that was always wanting to make money. So at a very young age, I started hustling, for a better word. I sold drugs. It's okay to say that, right?
Oh, yes. We want transparency.
Okay. I sold drugs. Matter of fact, even before that, I was brought up in a household where that basically was the standard. So when I got old enough, when I was a teenager, I sold drugs, and I was pretty good at it. And I kept selling drugs, and I became one of the bigger drug dealers in the state of Georgia. But even in doing that, there was a time that I knew that there was something else that God had wanted me to do. At an early age, I received an academic scholarship to go to Alabama State University, which I just totally turned down because that's not something that I wanted to do. My mom was upset, and she told me I had to do something, so I went in the military. But when I came out of the military, I was even more inspired to continue with my hustling ways. So I continued to hustle. I employed a lot of people. I did a lot of things, but it came one day is that I basically had to pay for the seeds that I had planted from a negative perspective. So I was arrested by the federal government. But it's so amazing is that before I got arrested by the federal government, I went into a church and I got saved. I actually was filled with the Holy Spirit. I spoke in tongues, and I actually thought that I had escaped. I thought that my life was on track. I thought that I was destined to do great things in God and that my past was behind me. But lo and behold, one day I got a knock on the door, and it was the FBI, and they had a historical warrant for me for stuff that had happened years ago. At this particular time, I was no longer associated with drugs or even with the people that I used to associate with. My life had totally changed. I was going to church. I was going to Bible study. I had enrolled in some college classes at Beulah Heights Bible College because I felt like if I was going to do ministry, that I really, really needed to prepare myself. So I got arrested, and I'm thinking that God is going to deliver me from this, not knowing that God did deliver me, but my thinking about deliverance was totally different. I'm thinking that God is going to come down and He's going to wipe my slate clean. I'm not going to have to deal with the FBI. God forbid if I should go to prison, because that's so unlike God to allow for one of His children to go to prison. But even after all of that, I went to prison. But even in that, I could see how the hand of God moved in my life. I actually could have received a life sentence for going. I didn't kill anybody. I didn't steal anything. I wasn't a rapist or murderer, nothing. I sold drugs. But God, in his infinite wisdom, he knew exactly what I needed. I probably needed to be dealt with about my arrogance, about my pride, and some of the stuff that I had built up in me as a result of being known as a drug dealer. So God had a way of doing that. So I was sentenced to 78 months in federal prison. And it's so amazing that I'm sitting here saying 78 months. I could not even fathom what was 78 months. It's because I could not calculate at that time. So I had a very prominent attorney from here in Atlanta, and he told me that's 5.5 years, and he patted me on the back. But even in that day that I stood before the judge and I got sentenced, the judge extended grace and mercy to me. And I know, again, it was the hand of the Lord. They did not even take me into custody that day. They allowed for me to go home and to get all my affairs in order. And they actually told me that you will receive a letter from us and we will tell you where to report. Again, I had this idea in my mind where I wanted to go to prison. I wanted to go to Florida. I had heard all of these good rumors about Florida, is that it's club fed and everything. But God had another agenda. God had another plan. God allowed for me to go to a place that I had never heard of in my life, and it's called Maxwell Air Force Base. That was definitely a blessing because God had people already stationed there, waiting for me to get there. And when I got there, it was as if that I walked into God's divine provisions. Is because even though I was incarcerated and even though I was in prison and away from my family, I must admit that the hand of God guided me through that whole process. And while being there, I actually went to Troy State University. I didn't go to a prison, Troy State University. I didn't go to one just for certain types of people, but I actually had an opportunity to go to prison and interact with regular people. While I was there also, I got an opportunity to work with children at an elementary school a couple of days out of the week. Again, that normally doesn't happen, but that's the hand of God that continued to work in my life. But more importantly, one of the things that happened to me was I got an opportunity to stop thinking so much about myself, and I got an opportunity to actually minister to young men that was coming into a situation and had no clue where they come from, how they got there, or more importantly, where they were going to go from that point. So I ended up doing 5 years, 2 months, and 12 days in federal prison. And it's just a blessing that I'm able to be here and to talk with you on today.
Well, you gave us a short mini skirt version of that because I'm sure in those 5 years, 4 months, there was a lot of things that happened to process you.
Yes.
And that is a challenge. And the reason why this program is so important today is because I need for those of you who are facing a loved one being incarcerated, that if he had not said that, if he had not opened up his mouth, it would have been nothing in your mind that would have said, this is a person who has spent a day, a moment in jail.
Right.
I need you to understand today that there's life, there's hope, that God is the God of a second and a third chance. Maybe you've got a son, a husband, a daughter, a loved one who is incarcerated. One of the things that we're going to discuss is now, what is his ministry? But even before that, I want him to talk about the role that the church played and the role that he is now playing, and what God has done to not only turn his life around, but to take him into a level of success that very few people who have never been incarcerated get to. And so I am wanting you to know today, there is hope for those of you who have loved ones who are incarcerated, for those of you who know that you have a person in your life that you love who seems to be going down the wrong path, who seem to be headed for incarceration. There is hope for you. This program is designed to encourage you because too often the enemy wants us to think that once a person has committed a crime or once a person has missed it and failed in any area of their life, that their life is over. Jesus came for those who are failures, for those who have fallen, for those who have sinned. And the Bible says all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And therefore, we need to know that abundant life is available to all of us, and that we can forget those things that are behind, as the Apostle Paul said, and that we can press on to our future, our destiny, our call. And I want to encourage you today to listen. We're going to take a break in a few moments, but when we come back, Oh, Hardy is going to tell us, Minister Hardy is going to tell us about how God has used him and elevated him, and even how the church has failed in coming alongside people to encourage them when they have fallen. Remember, the church is